Hi, everybody. It's podcast time. Sam and I are in the room. Democratic Chair Matt Shears is supposed to join us, but he is under the weather, and so we'll just leave it at that. Although, by the end of this episode, I will prove to all of you that the Earth is flat. That's my only real objective for today, is that the Earth is flat, and I'll explain more here in a little bit. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostinagreement.com. I've started doing a little bit of work on Election Guide 23, but, it's still very early in this one. Favorite podcast provider, give us a like, share, tell your friends about us, that kind of thing. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Like, share, follow, all those things as well. I'm really excited. On Monday, I've got Ashley Capps coming from the AC Entertainment. I know he wants to promo some Big Ears Festival information. And then I got some other stuff I want to talk to him about as well. So we're going to do all that and more. So here we go. Hey, buddy.
Fiscade.
Trying to figure some stuff out, doing some things. What's new with you?
Nothing new.
Nothing new?
Nothing new.
Nothing new at all. I quit my job. Well, I put my notice in and quit my job.
I heard.
I'm excited about that. A little scared of it,
Yeah.
It's weird. I haven't quit a job in a long time.
It's an interesting step.
It is indeed. It's better than getting fired, though. At least it's on my terms.
That's true.
So that's what's new with me. So in the last week's episode, we started. I forgot to, and then brought it in because I pulled down the outro so we could go in and discuss a little further. I believe it is House Bill 0817, written or introduced by Elaine Davis, regarding election laws. Introduced prohibits members of a local governing body to be elected through an elective procedure that requires candidates to be nominated from a district and elected at large. Again, it's a direct attack on the city of Knoxville election process, which I agree with the principle of what's the result of this bill would be. I just don't believe it's the state's right. I don't believe it's appropriate that the state to force this change upon the city. The city should make this change on their own.
Yeah.
But it's one of those weirdisms. The people who are elected in the city,
so unquote, entrenched, would they ever vote against it?
Right, and I think more importantly, it's like, well, you won that election. Like you won the election that was in that format. And is it likely to increase your chances of winning in your district or lessen them? And I think for the majority of the city, it probably wouldn't matter. I think there's a couple districts that the person in the seat probably would have lost if it was a normal district-only election.
So I'm sure there's polling data that would tell them how the likelihood of faring.
I think, and I want to say it was Cipro. And I didn't verify it by going through all the different precinct numbers and shit like that. But Cipro said that he won on District 3. If the District 3... It was Cipro and, I guess, SEMA for District 3 in the city last time around in 21. He told me at least that... And again, I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was him that said that he won... If you just took the precincts in District 3, right, he won all those precincts. Or the majority of those precincts. Enough to have... won that seat if it was district only. Now, does it change the body of the city council? Not really. It would be a 7-1, 8-1 body. I mean, assuming that everybody's the parties that everybody assumes they are, kind of thing. But yeah,
right.
Randy Pace had shared an article from the Tennessean or something like that about I think it's House Bill 405, which is closing primaries. That's already been dropped. It's already died in process, but it was one that was, I don't know, like I jokingly encouraged Randy to get it done because I want him to do it, but not for the right reasons. I want him to do it to make it clear to voters like me that my opinion doesn't matter. Then hopefully other people like me will make a big stink about it and we can maybe have some real independent candidates come along.
Just come out and say it.
Yeah. Just be honest about your bullshittery and, let us, flex our self-governance. So, but I was trying to find this bill 817, and so I was looking at everything that Miss Davis has sponsored. She's an official sponsor on, not a co-sponsor. She's got like 3 different election ones. The 423. No, it's Department of Education. Sorry. 816, is that the one I just said? No, it says, as introduced, authorize the county election commission to designate a polling place outside of the precinct to serve for certain municipal elections only if the polling place serves not more than 50 registered voters of a municipality. I don't understand why that would need to exist.
If there was some crazy small district that, I guess there's less than 50 registered voters even in that district, that they could then, they wouldn't be required by the state, I guess, to set up a polling place for that one district. They could say, hey,
if you have to go to another one,
all 5 of you guys drive down this way,
right?
Go down to the school, vote with the 20 other people down there,
right? And then there was the one that she did, and it's already been withdrawn, which got her in some heat. The 1099, which was the deleting the authorization for early voting. But yeah. Anyway, trying to putz around and see what my District 18 rep's been up to. Apparently, Miss Johnson made it all the way up to Ben Shapiro's desk, and he spent a segment on one of his shows this last week going off on her.
Going off on her?
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
I just thought it was interesting that Ben Shapiro that Gloria Johnson would ever be on his radar.
I saw her quoted. I think it was in an AP article or an NPR article.
What was the topic?
I think it was talking about the trans bill that's coming. I think it was kind of a collection of the trans bill and
the drag bill.
Yeah, the drag bill and
both of them are done. Both of them are
the drag bill and the abortion bill.
Oh, okay.
I think it was in conjunction of both.
Yeah, the drag bill and the trans bills are both passed. They're on their way to Lee's desk. I don't imagine Lee would veto it. He could abstain from touching it, which passes anyway.
Right.
So those are going into law in July, which is just horseshittery.
Well, I guess there's a third one. There is the trans medical procedure for minors.
Yeah, that's the trans bill that I was referencing.
Okay. I thought you were trying to correct me and saying drag bill. I was like...
No.
That was... Yeah, it's different bills, yeah.
Yeah, the drag bill in public and or a place where a minor could potentially view a drag show is one.
Yeah.
And we were doing Compass Guys today, and they didn't know the answer to this, and I think it's an interesting question, and I don't know where I would try to find this answer, because if the Compass Guys don't know, then I don't know where to ask. But on the transgender treatment for youths exclusions, I inquired on whether mental health coverage would be banned, or how mental health coverage would be treated in this situation. Because to me, the implication would be that mental health coverage would be in the more old school body dysmorphia sense than it would be in any sort of supportive type of situation. You get what I'm saying? Like if any sort of medical intervention, which mental health is part of the medical field,
right?
And so if any sort of medical interventions that are promoting, for lack of a better word, any transitioning actions, be it hormonal, surgical,
like hypnosis,
medication, or whatever, if there's mental health that is supportive of the premise,
pretty sure like hormone blockers are banned,
right? But that's what I'm saying, though, but would a mental health, would a therapist, a mental health therapist of some sort, be banned from doing any sort of supportive action?
Right.
Now, obviously, I think it's not like they can't go see a psychiatrist. It's just whether or not that psychiatrist can be supportive of said action or feelings, or whether they're required by law in the state of Tennessee now to say, no, that's not an option.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got into it with my mom on that one last night, actually. And, I'm not surprised my mom is supportive of the idea of not letting this happen to kids kind of thing. And it's like, I get it, Mom. I do. I don't think I would do that for my kids. I don't think I would allow them to go through that. I don't think they're smart enough to make that decision. But I also know that I'm not smart enough to make that decision for other families and whatever. She's like, but how much of it is like parents being all crazy? It's like, there's certainly some that are just parents, because there's an individual whom I follow on the Facebook who is trans themselves, who when they were still a woman had 2 or 3 kids, and 2 of those kids are trans. The math seems a little bit ridiculous. I don't think it's a genetic, like, I don't think it's I don't know. I'm totally talking about my ass, I guess, but I don't know. I've never heard any conversation that transsexualism is passed down genetically.
No,
that if your parent is trans, you are more likely to be trans.
You get a little bit of personality, but as far as
I would say that
gender preference, and gender identity,
I would say that in the nature versus nurture argument, I would say there's a lot of nature that is supportive of the idea of trans, which makes it more likely that a kid might be into it.
Right.
You know, and especially in that confusing age of kids where you don't know what the fuck you are and you're confused or whatever. It's like, well, my mom was my dad, just trans issues, whatever. That makes sense to me. That is the adult that I grew up with. So that's the framework for an adult that I'm comfortable with. So it makes sense that in that sense that a kid would think they're trans because their parents are trans. But as, you know, genetically likely, it seems kind of ridiculous. Mathematically, that there are anyway. And so to say that'd be the appropriate action for that family, but again, it doesn't matter. I don't know. That's the main point, is I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if it's more likely because this parent is an activist on the subject or that this kids actually are. I don't know. And that's my problem with it, with the idea of it being illegal. I don't fucking know. Why would I say what you could do with it? It just doesn't make any sense. You know, and then I go off on my whole tangent about, you know, like we pump kids full of Adderall because they can't sit still in the classroom for 6 hours. What does that do to the kids long term?
Right.
That's not child abuse. And then I went on my fucking baseball rant that you hate. But I think it's accurate. It's fucking child abuse. It could be considered child abuse, I guess. Because, you know, it's like, but she's like, yeah, but it's a permanent thing when they change their gender and stuff like that. It's like, this kid blows his elbow out when he's 16 in high school baseball, can never throw a ball again. That's a permanent damage that's been done because he's so stuck on baseball.
So just gradual lack of sleep or just overstressed. Just completely pumped with stress hormones for years and years on end.
You know, starts dabbling in some fucking steroids and shit because he wants to win and he's got so much pressure to be a winner.
Right.
There are permanent side effects of that style of parenting too, but we're not trying to regulate that out.
Yeah.
And I think that's my stance on it. It's like, it's not, I don't know that I've heard anybody articulate it in the way that says, no, I think it's a terrible idea, but it's also none of my business to tell other people that it's a good idea or not. I've never heard anybody make that argument. But I think that's the correct argument for me, at least, is that no, it shouldn't be done, but no, it's not my right to tell you can't. That's where I'm so stuck on that one. And then the other one, the drag one, I got in another argument with some guy because Zachary was bragging about it on his Facebook page. And I said, good God, Zachary, I thought you were a Republican. You're supposed to be...
Bragging about getting the bill passed? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, I thought you were supposed to be, you know, the parents' choice guy. What happened to the parents' rights? And the parents first and raising kids or whatever. And some guy comments like, God, I need to quote it. I'm sorry. I know you hate it when I go to my Facebook page and quote shit. But, like, for me saying that I think Zachary's terrible for being proud of this bill or whatever, this person's response to me was that I like groomers. If I have a problem with the state of Tennessee demanding how people live their lives, that means that I like groomers. That was his argument on why my take on it.
Yeah, I love this whole like groomers scare tactic because it's not with anyone else that has a larger track record of grooming children.
Right. Yeah. We have the Catholic Diocese in Knoxville has got issues with children with sexual issues in children.
Yeah.
But they exist, and you know Christians are the good ones. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, Zachary posted a picture of the state flag, and he says, "The House passed legislation today joining the Senate that bans gender mutilation surgery for minors." And then he also goes on to say, "We also passed legislation banning minors from attending explicit drag shows," which is such a weird phrase. And I said, good God, Zachary, I never thought I'd find an occasion to agree with my arch nemesis, Brian Cornelio, who I bitch about all the time on here. And then I say, you ran for parents' rights, right? ? You're supposed to be a Republican, you know, less taxes, less regulations, yet here you are regulating what people can dress like and act like. And this other individual, we'll just call them Sean. I won't say their whole name. He says, Seth, why do you support exposing children to sexual content? That's called grooming. It is not about parental rights, as parents who take their kids to drag shows are child abusers. To which I said, Sean, I don't support it, but more importantly, I don't suffer the ego to think that I have the authority to make that choice for other people. If your concern is exposing children to sexual content and assuming drag is automatically sexual, and for the sake of conversation, I'll agree to that, even though it's not true. Why are we not banning pop songs and videos? Why are we not banning Victoria's Secret? Hell, by your definition, Dolly is a groomer who built a theme park to attract kids. And he put this dude's response to it was like, was that Dolly's different than drag, and you just because this is wrong doesn't mean that this is right. And it's like, okay, you're right, but you got to be consistent here. And then somehow Brian figures out how to piss me off, even though I'm agreeing with him. But because he goes into some diatribe about the right agenda and shit like that. And it's like, I don't care. I don't agree with you on any of that shit. I'm just agreeing with you on calling Zachary an asshole for supporting this bill.
Right.
Leave me alone. But that's the mentality, though, and it's like, I think there is certainly a significant and likely sexual aspect to drag shows on the normal occasion, but it doesn't mean they have to be, and they always are. I mean, and that's the thing to me, and it's like, and again, but if a dude being a Dolly impersonator is sexual, but Dolly herself isn't, that's fucking horseshit. It doesn't make sense. Those two things can't exist at the same time in a logical world, to me.
I just don't want people to be happy.
No, they cannot. But again, it doesn't matter. They can't rationalize the idea that just because they don't get it means it's a bad thing. That's the problem with it to me. It's just because you don't understand it, or you can't wrap your head around it, or God says that's a bad idea, which, who knows if God actually says that's a bad idea or not. Who knows?
My book says it does.
Well, Leviticus says all sorts of fucked up shit. You were allowed to stone women for whatever, and you're not allowed to sleep next to your wife when she's on her period, let alone fuck her.
Yeah. Genocide's okay. As long as it's the right tribe.
The great voice in the sky had some gotcha moment with Abraham telling him to kill his own kid.
Yeah.
Hey, kill your own kid for me, man.
Okay. It was just a test. I was just testing you.
Are you sure? Yeah, dude, kill your own kid for me. All right. I gotcha. It's like, okay, yeah, if that's our reference for what is good and right in the world, and that's actually, I was thinking about this earlier this week, because I think it's an interesting conversation. Like, where are you at on religions and whatnot? Like, what is your, are you a spiritual person? Are you into religions? Are you dogmatic?
Not too much.
I'm certainly not dogmatic, but I also, again, I'm stupid, but I'm not sure it's more likely or less likely that some all-knowing being snapped their fingers versus a couple atoms collided and all of a sudden. I don't know which one. Which one's more believable?
The latter.
Is just all of a sudden the entire mass of the universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for some unknown reason it just popped, and now everything burst into existence? That is more believable than some unknown being just painting with a brush and making a thing?
Yeah, because we can prove a lot of that math.
I don't know.
Of the actual expansion of the universe.
I always thought, I think of God. I think
my whole thing is I'm sorry, we can't figure out what happened. They estimate 4 or 5 billion years ago. So
sure.
We're literally trying to look back billions of years, billions of years, not hundreds of years.
Hundreds of billions of years, maybe trillions of years. I don't know what the total number. Maybe Google.
No, because there used to be a popular theory that it may have been a universe that has expanded and contracted numerous times, but I think they've already kind of ruled that one out. I think that was not necessarily long-held theory, but it was a plausible theory that was floated around.
13.7 billion years, according to Princeton.
Okay, billions of years.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, I don't fault scientists for being able to figure this shit out. And they're like, you haven't figured it out yet? Okay, I'm going back with the God thing. That's you guys don't know what happened? All right, well, somebody had to have made it then.
I'm more of the school of the God, flick the ball of mass.
It's kind of
I don't ascribe to the premise that there is some puppet master up there pulling strings and poking things and pushing around and stuff like that. But I'm open to the idea, at least, that something started this
think what some refer to as
Other than to seize.
deism, that there was kind of a creator that set something in motion, but isn't
Right.
doesn't have to
Is
do
that
with
word?
day-to-day life.
Yeah, just kind of like, that God is the chain on a roller coaster. Pulls you to the top of the hill, then let go. And maybe every once in a while, puts it back on the chain, starts this fucking thing over again because it gets messy.
I don't know. Even when I go down the rabbit hole, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I just don't. Yeah,
Like, wow, but you can't question God.
I think,
But question his motives.
But that to me is just that one's easily ignorable to me because it's just like, well, we as humanity created the books, created the dogma, created the practice, created the rules, created the name, created all those parts, and so us trying to define that and prove that to each other in existence doesn't make any sense either. It's just like, well, we made it up because we couldn't figure out what thunder was.
We've had many of religions throughout the world.
Sure.
That we've kind of
Who was it?
fell to the wayside.
Was it Ricky Gervais? It was Ricky. I think it was Ricky Gervais on Colbert. Had a great one. He was like I don't know. They got on the topic of religion, and Ricky Gervais is like, "Well, how many gods do you believe in, Stephen?" And Colbert is like, "Just one." And Gervais is like, "Well, I believe in one less God than you do." And Colbert's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, in the history of time, there's been like 13,000 something different gods that have existed and all this kind of stuff. And you believe in one of 13,000. I believe in 0 of 13,000 something.
Christopher Hitchens had a funny little thing on it, talking about like pantheism. We used to believe in, multiple gods, and now we got into monotheism, believe in one God. And he's like, we're getting closer and closer to the truth every day.
That is pretty good. I like that. But it's like I get it. But to go back to where that kind of started into the politics side of it is, I don't care. Like I don't care that a book says.
Right, but that's what's bleeding into politics, and that's what's starting to make laws based upon.
I agree, and I think it's something that needs to be pushed back upon, because I think, as I drive around Knoxville and look at license plates, because the state of Tennessee made it real easy for me to tell who believes in God and who doesn't care or doesn't believe in God, and who is.
Make sure everyone knows that they do.
Well, yeah, because it's interesting, because it kind of bothers me, I'm not exactly sure who it's supposed to single out.
Does it raise money for anything, or is it just?
No, it's just
okay.
You could when you go to the DMV, they ask you, do you want one or not?
All right.
And so and it says really small over the logo, "In God We Trust."
Right.
Which whatever, fine. If it was a big deal, I wouldn't make a big deal out of it to say yes or no. The way the lady at the store or at the DMV asked me, it seemed pretty chill. I was like, no, I'd rather not. But if you notice, it's not just "In God We Trust." It's "In God We Trust" is 3 letters and 4 numbers. If it doesn't have "In God We Trust," it's 3 numbers and 4 letters.
Huh.
So I might have those switch back and forth, but the premise being that anybody who knows the rules on it can look at a Tennessee license plate and know instantaneously if they have "In God We Trust" on it or not, because the way it's written is super small and hard to read. And I don't it feels intentional to me. Why would you do it that way? Why would you make it even more distinct that people are or are not putting that on their plate?
Say when they were stamping out so many plates, it's just easier to do it that way.
I don't
just trying to alternate every single other one, because you're going to have that machine just making it in sequential.
Sure, and you could have done ABC 1 2 3 4, ABC 1 2 3 5, and gone through a whole sequence of 10,000 plates. And still had numbers or letters first, numbers second, and then took the "In God We Trust" off and flipped over.
Swapping back and forth between the regular blue and then the "In God We Trust" plates.
No, but that's what I'm saying though. It's one, it's a vinyl printer. It's not it's an ink printer. It's a sticker on a piece of metal. It's not they're not stamping plates anymore.
That's right. They're not raised letters anymore.
Yeah, and so while I acknowledge in the old school version that might make sense. But even then, you could do 1,000 plates that are letters first, numbers second with "In God We Trust," and then another 1,000 plates that are letters first, numbers second without "In God We Trust."
No,
it's a distinct. It is a distinct. It is intentional. It seems very intentional to me. Now, why I don't know whose idea it was, but it's intentional.
It feels intentional. I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't know the reason behind who put it in place and why.
I think you're reading
but it seems intentional to me.
I don't think anyone would ever make that
Okay.
that connection. Like, hold on.
Maybe
Wait, that one's got 3 letters in the front. Ah, that's a Christian.
Yeah.
I'm following a Christian. Get the fuck out of my way. God damn you.
Yeah, something like that. You see, I actually find it kind of hilarious because I was on this almost 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. The ACLU has been picking a bunch of fights about license plate cameras recently.
I saw you said that article.
Yeah, so there's a new one on WBR tonight, Smoky Mountain National Park in Townsend. The Townsend entrance and the one other entrance is piloting the program to test some of these camera readers. And the big thing about the article that I sent you that bothers me about it, and I guess the Chat GPT agreed with me, that bothers me about it is it clearly says it's not a license plate reader. It's a car identifier. It says that you can go into that system and you can search for any identifier you can think of a car. A black Nissan truck. You're not searching for a person. You're not searching for a specific license plate number. You're specific, like it said in the article, something about like a yellow car with rust on it. You can put those keywords in, and the AI in the camera system will, so essentially what's happening is when you drive by that camera, it's taking a picture of every car. And then as soon as it takes a picture of that car, the AI is pulling out the license plate number if it can see it, the make of the car, the model of the car if it can see it. And I would say it's probably pulling the make or model out of the car just by the profile of the car, because it can compare that to other versions of the same car, the color of the car, unique identifiers, like if it's a pickup truck with a camper or without a camper, you can search that and it's going to bring up for an officer those things. And so where my mind went when I was reading through this article was this Memphis story where, 5 cops beat some kid to death? And last I heard on it, and I haven't super followed the story, but last I heard on it, it was intentional. And these guys got arrested, and they're in jail for murder now, and they should be. But that it wasn't just that it was just some random black kid that they were fucking with, and it got crazy, and then they beat him to death. It was one of the officers that was beating him to death's girlfriend or wife's lover that they beat to death. Because the dude they beat to death and the girl worked together at FedEx, and apparently had some extramaritals or extra whatever outside of work under the nose of the police officer boyfriend. And so I'm thinking, well, let's say you're a cop.
I think that would have been a bigger story.
And again, I could be wrong, but it doesn't matter. The hypothetical I'm putting in place still exists with this system. You're a cop. You come home, and as you're pulling up your street, this car pulls out of your driveway and hauls ass the other direction. You're like, what the fuck was that? That was weird. And you pull in your driveway, come inside, and it's just you get that weird fucking feel. There's some shit going on. You get in an argument with the missus. She's like, who the fuck just left our house? Who was just here? Oh, it was just I ordered some pizza. Or it was like some bullshit story. You're like, I know she's fucking lying to me. And so, put in his little notebook. It's like, and that was like, it was like a 97 Honda, 2-door, whatever. Going to work the next day, search that shit up. Now, according to the article, at least, the system can't tell you who owns the car. The system could tell you the license plate number, and then you could go around the back way and figure out who owns the car. The system could tell you if that car was at the closest camera to his house at a time, and he could track that and figure all that out.
Right.
And he could set it to the system to alert him when that car is in a certain area. So theoretically, again, I'm not saying this happened at all, but theoretically, that cop who is chasing down the lover of his girlfriend could use that system to find him and then therefore do whatever he's going to do. Which, even if it's just harass him, just be like, just give him fucking bullshit tickets and harass him because he's a cop. Yes, I understand that you could sell the value of this identification system and be able to pull all that shit up quick and easy and that kind of stuff to help chase down, somebody who stole a kid or, help track runaway kids on Amber Alerts and stuff like that. I get it. I understand the sales pitch of the value for it, but I don't understand our willingness to just be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. You can track me and spy on me and do all that stuff. I'm not doing anything wrong, so what's it matter? We just give it all up because it might help with a certain thing here or there. And like, what did it say in the article? It was like 3%. Like, well, there was some number in there that bothered me too.
I didn't read the article.
This is WBR too. Apparently, WBR's got a boner for this storyline. Shut up, ad. Yeah, I'll fix that. I'll take that ad noise out in post. Anyway, they drove around town, found a bunch of them all up and down Alcoa Highway.
In Tennessee, hundreds of cameras are capturing your car trips. They're called automatic license plate readers. One company alone says it's installed more than 1,000 cameras in the state, including at least 18 here in Knoxville. Flock Safety says their cameras solve crimes and find missing people. But as 10 News investigative reporter Grace King shows us, what's a benefit to some is an invasion of privacy to others.
Probably not.
We are all over the state of Tennessee.
This is Alcoa Highway. Driving from the edge of Knoxville to the start of Maryville, we spotted at least 6 license plate readers.
It's hard to drive anywhere these days without being captured by some of these license plate recognition devices.
All of these are from Flock Safety.
It's public information on public roads. No personally identifiable information is captured within Flock.
Josh Thomas says Flock's cameras create a snapshot of cars that drive by.
Say an eyewitness saw something. They saw a yellow truck drive by. Investigator can go into our system and literally type in those keywords. Right. Yellow truck, find that one particular vehicle and get the evidence they need to go out and solve crime.
That's one method the FBI used to track Mark Reno. Federal court records show. Investigators say he intentionally burned down the Knoxville Planned Parenthood clinic in late 2021 and fired shots last summer into a federal building.
Our technology is involved in helping solve about 5% of the total crime that's funny. Solved.
That's actually bullshit.
Today.
Records show a license plate reader on Asheville.
So my understanding of that dude's story is that, yes, they used a license plate reader to find him from the Duncan Federal Building when he shot up the Federal Building with the shotgun. He's also the guy that shot up Planned Parenthood, shot through their front door years before, and then subsequently burned down Planned Parenthood. But when they were investigating him for shooting the shotgun at the Duncan Federal Building, they found the stuff related to, and so it's not that it didn't help them. It helped them find the guy who shot up the Duncan Federal Building, who also happened to be the guy. It didn't help them find the Planned Parenthood guy. It helped them find the guy from the Duncan Building. And so the way that pitch read to me is that it's like, well, help them find the guy that burned down Planned Parenthood. Sort of. I mean, that's a stretch in terms, but yes, it's factually accurate, but it's a stretch.
Well, I mean, I think you would make that same claim if you arrested someone and did a fingerprint or DNA analysis and found them for a previous crime. You would say you got someone that did that current crime and also the previous crime, that unsolved crime,
right? But you would
from years past.
You wouldn't say fingerprinting technology helped us. Yeah, I guess you would. Yeah, but still, the fingerprints don't I get what you're saying.
They still, I mean, I'm assuming they're basically saying, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're saying they solved 2 crimes, two unsolved crimes.
Anyway, and the ACLU guy comes up here
captured Reno's Ford Fusion around 11:15 the morning of the shooting. Authorities say someone in that car headed downtown and fired at least 3 rounds into a federal building around 1:45 that afternoon. 10 minutes later, a license plate reader on Asheville Highway again flagged the car.
Our recommendations typically are put them at the ingress and egress points of the city. So as people are coming in or leaving.
Reno died in police custody last August.
Yeah.
In Knoxville, police have also used the cameras to find missing people, recover stolen guns, and track down murder suspects.
There's no reason that we can't allow the police to have reasonable benefits from this technology.
What's reasonable depends on who you ask.
You have to ask, how often does it solve the problem? What are the costs? And what are the benefits? What are the side effects for people's privacy, for our liberty, and not being watched by the government all the time?
The American Civil Liberties Union says it has major concerns about personal privacy.
Location data is a very sensitive set of information about a person. It can reveal your medical life, your political life, your religious activities, your sexual activities, how often you go to bars, et cetera, et cetera.
Senior policy analyst Jay Stanley says the cameras capture more than just the license plate.
Right, this is the part.
What's the model? Are there bumper stickers that say particular things on the car? And allow police to search by those attributes. And that makes it an even more powerful sort of surveillance device.
He worries those details could target people based on their personal beliefs.
These are the side effects that you get when you build a mass surveillance system, which we've never really had in this country, and which a lot of Americans don't want to see built.
The ACLU says one possible solution is limiting how long the data is stored.
There's no reason that the government should be retaining
records
of everybody's comings and goings.
After all,
it's a bad compromise,
going,
but I get where they're going with it.
Probably on camera.
License plate reading technology is very powerful technology, especially as the number of readers gets more dense in an area, because it eventually could become tantamount to putting a GPS tracker on every car.
Right now on WBIR.com, we have a map of where you can.
So I don't know what WBIR got the what bug flew up their ass that they decided that this was something, because they did this one and then they did another one tonight on the Smoky Mountain the National Park entrance and exit using one too.
Depends on whatever stories the editor wants to run.
Yeah, I'm not mad at him for it. It's finally something that's interesting and exciting and local, and hopefully people are paying attention to. Probably not. Probably most people were just like, well, yeah, that's cool. I'm good with that. I'll give him a little bit of credit for getting the ACLU guy on there as well. And actually doing a both sides of the story deal.
Yeah.
I don't. I do and I don't. Like when in my dealings with WBAR, as one of those two people in a story, I'm always the first. Every time I've done a story with them, I'm always the first, so I get no response to whatever the other person says, but they get all the responses to what I said. Because we've done it with early days when we first opened in the vape shop. And it was just vape, and vape was all crazy, and everybody's freaking out and that kind of shit. I was like, hell yeah, come on, do a story. And I was all excited about it because, I'm a firm believer in the no press is bad press philosophy. Come on, do a story. And it did help, don't get me wrong. People that weren't aware of us became aware of us and came out to see us. But, they did me, and then they went to the health department afterwards. And it was clear to me, because I sat through the whole thing and they asked me all these questions, that a number of the questions they asked the health department were responding to things that I said.
I don't know about that.
I have to go find.
I'm sure they did similar questions just to line up the story.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think they necessarily took your responses. They're like, oh, well, we asked this guy this.
I would think so.
How would you respond to that?
I mean, they didn't. They in their airing of the story, they didn't show the interview. They just showed the responses, and they did it. They voice-overed the prompt to where it was going.
Right.
And so it's unclear exactly what the question they asked was, but it felt like it's a perception thing, I guess.
Right. They do it all in context, basically.
Right. But it felt to me like they were getting a chance to respond. Because I don't blame a reporter per se.
Well, then props to the editor for splicing it and having the story run together coherently.
Okay, but if it's just not it's not much of a debate if it's just answers to somebody else's.
It's not supposed to be a debate.
But it's not a clear.
They're doing a news story.
But it's not a fair story.
It is not a question and answer with a business owner and the health department.
But it's not a fair story if the health department is getting to address statements that I've made specifically as a response.
Again, I think you're really...
I'll have to go find it because it's been 7-8 years ago.
Assuming way too much that they took your answers and went to the health department and were like, well, they said this and this. I wouldn't
blame a journalist to do that. I'm not in a bad way, but it's a...
How do you know they didn't go to the health department first?
Because they said, we're going to go over to the health department and this will air later on tonight.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what they told me. And it's like, oh, wish you would have gone there first, and I would have preferred to have been the second one. And I'm like, It's like, okay. And again, like a win's a win. I mean, no press is bad press. I'll take an interview because that was not the one. The other one, then they didn't air that line. But the other one is when I said the stupid baby formula line.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear that story?
I think so.
Yeah. Because I'm
familiar with the schools.
Yeah, it was just like, it was like, oh, vaping's attractive to kids. You guys are targeting kids. It's like, no, I'm not. But if a lot of adults like to baby formula vape,
when you were on the news talking about the school budget or whatever.
Oh, no. This was all vape related to that one. I didn't do any. I'm trying to figure. I don't remember. Yeah, I still don't know what's going on with ESSER funds, if you want to go into that story. Like I think the second check came in. They were talking about it at the last school board meeting. I don't feel like I've seen any influx. And they do have some tutor stuff available that wasn't available. That's free to students and parents. And I know that's part of the ESSER fund stuff, but it's a bunch of damn money. But yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this camera thing. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's rude. I don't think. I especially don't like that part where it's not targeted. Like the state's not supposed to be able to blanket surveil. They're supposed to have targeted surveillance. They have a specific individual. They go get a warrant. They tap their phone. That kind of stuff. I thought that's how this thing worked. So I would like to not see that happening, but it is. I would like to not see people being destroyed for being gay or drag or trans or any of that stuff either. But we live in Tennessee. Apparently Tennessee is number 1 in the nation in what would be considered anti-LGBTQ legislation.
Awesome.
Yeah. Congratulations,
number
Tennessee.
1. Oh, what was that?
What?
See, like 2 little crazy spikes.
Oh, as you put down the thing and it made a thunk?
Oh, damn.
I don't have a shock mount on that mic, but I think we talked about this last week, and what confuses me greatly is even in like the normal Republican-ish model of, we want business to thrive and stuff like that, this legislation doesn't make sense.
Which one?
Either any of the LGBTQ trans issues, ones that we've been talking about. Doesn't make any sense.
No, but it's appeasing some constituents.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that, except I don't know. Like, I guess this appeasement of these constituents, the people that actually care enough that they voted for Zachary because he said he was going to do this, and he did. Like, what do they actually like? I don't understand what they expect or want in the long term.
They feel like they won. They're like, hey, we got a guy in there, and they
won this thing. But I mean, Zachary had a bigger platform than just I'm going to destroy LGBT community. There was more of his platform than that.
Right.
And I'm confident that one of his platform things was better schools or smarter kids or some shit like that. I'm confident that part of his platform was economics, stronger businesses, more high-paying jobs into our communities kind of shit. And it's like, well, the young professionals who are seeking these high-paying jobs or own these high-paying job businesses that you want to bring in to the state or in Knox County, they don't like this. They really don't like this. I would wager that the majority, especially, the vast majority, like 80% of under 30-year-old who actually vote are at worst apathetic towards trans issues, but most likely at least like, yeah, they should be able to exist. Like, I would say that the majority of anybody who bothers to vote under 30, very few, or the very small minority of it are like, I hate trans people and they should not exist, of people voting under 30. I would say under 40.
There's some. I mean, I've seen some studies of a rise of, on both sides, but I guess not necessarily political activism, but I think even like some high schoolers that are at least interested in politics and kind of monitoring of what's going on in the world and what's going on in their local politics.
And of those,
I think there's like, the young Republicans. And
sure. And of
assuming there's a young Democrat society as well.
Right. But of those, but I would say that of those subsets of younger people who are politically interested, the vast majority of them are pro-LGBTQ stuff. Especially the ones who are going to bring and be employed at high-paying young professional jobs. Because they're probably college educated, or at least had some college, and they're under 30, they're more likely to be left-leaning, just generally speaking.
Not necessarily.
Yes, necessarily. That is statistically correct. Long term.
So just because you're young and went to college,
yes, you are statistically
a
significantly
high likelihood
of being liberal. Yes.
Wow.
Maybe not being like a registered hardcore Democrat, but at least now the statistical of how many vote is pretty small. But in polling and stuff like that, voting or not, the majority of that population
Find me where you're seeing this.
is left leaning.
Next time you stumble across these numbers. So I've heard it said kind of tangentially.
I don't
In
know
passing,
how
I just
would you
never.
search this.
I don't know. I don't even know how they get those numbers. It sounds like a gross assumption to me. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of just the general assumption of all colleges are just liberal breeding grounds and brainwashing everyone to be liberal. Like every single college is just a liberal arts college.
New York Times: how educational differences are widening America's political rift. College graduates are now a firmly Democratic bloc, and they are shaping the party's futures. Those without degrees, by contrast, have flocked to Republicans. Trying to see where the President Biden won about 60% of college-educated voters in 2020, including an outright majority of white college graduates. There's a significant vote. 41% of people who cast ballots last year were four-year college. That's larger number of college graduates votes as well. Yet even as college graduates have surged in numbers and grown increasingly liberal, Democrats are no stronger than they were 10 years ago because they don't vote. Democrats gain with white college graduates. That's a chart. Let's see here. Keeps going through this. If anything pops out, holler. I'm trying to speed read. Yeah. I'm really just looking for a data set other than that shitty chart.
You're saying just kind of like widen the political rift.
I mean, even
But even then, they kind of talk about college graduates, not necessarily people that have just gone to college. But I don't know.
I mean,
I can't see it as a gross, I guess, contributor to it,
contributor to
political leaning.
Oh, I think it is. I think. I really do. I apologize. I put quickly look at it, and I'll see if I can find something this week to show you. But in all of, Ben Shapiro, listening to his podcast, my Breaking Points podcast, my Super Lefty podcast, Rogan's podcast, which Rogan's not a very good example, but Breaking Points, they love their polls and stats and charts and stuff like that. These guys are long-term political analysts, stuff like that. It is a normal thing, just like the general assumption that the African American community votes more left on average. The younger college educated community votes more left on average. The younger uneducated community votes more right on average. These are just norms of politics over time, and and some of it's shifting around. Like the black community is not voting as Democratic as automatically as they used to. But it used to be a given.
All right, I saw a poll the other day, and it sounded like a valid poll, and they said they polled 1,200 people.
I mean, but what I'm trying to reference and what I'm saying here is that even if I'm watching,
I'm saying some of these polls, I
sure,
don't know how large these polls are. I mean, we're talking about, we talk about all the time how often people do not go and vote.
Right.
A lot of our, I guess, data on how different age groups are voting are literally going off of voting records.
Sure.
So you're going off of already skewed stats,
right,
and trying to interpret
sure.
political
Well, the point
leaning.
I'm trying to get to is this is a norm among many political analysts, not just the ones I listen to. This is stuff that you'd see on CNN and MSNBC and stuff like that too. Everybody references all the different, long-term norms of political likelihoods of individuals and what all the demographic issues, all the demographic breakdowns that push people voting one way or the other. And one of the ones that is off-cited is that college-educated, young, regardless of color, tend to vote left by a significant majority of that block. Now the problem is, not tend to vote left, tend to lean left, and the reason we don't see the impact in actual election cycles is that they also don't vote. And so it's it's polling, sending out surveys, going to college campuses and talking to kids, that kind of thing is where they're getting the data from.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm not disagreeing with you that there's a lot of weird polling out there that is poorly done or misleading, whether intentionally or not. But like this is one of those that's
going off of what they can get. I mean, it's hard
Right.
to get 100,000 people to respond to a poll.
But this one is one of the, to go back to the original point though, this one is one of those that is a consistent, regular talking point when you're talking about demographics and how they tend to vote. The young, college educated don't vote a lot, but tend to lean left, period. Like that, it's just that to me is one of those norms over time that that I've seen on Tucker and I've seen it on
I hear
Shapiro.
more just in the disparaging side of it, where they're just like, oh, these colleges are just brainwashing everyone into this liberal society.
Yeah, right. And I could see how that you would jump to that conclusion if you're an idiot. Like I could see that premise, that you would say that it's some brainwashing whatever thing that they're trying to do. I could see how you could jump to that conclusion. I don't think that's completely the case. I think there are some, I think there are some activist professors, just like we were talking about. There's activist doctors and activist parents out there that do shit for the sake of the activism, not for the sake of what they're actually trying to get accomplished, kind of thing. But I think it's just, I think it's the theory, at least, is that you have, in a college setting, you're forced to confront more things than in your high school or your personal life at home. You're forced to interact with people from different places and different races and all that different stuff. And it tends to open you up to the different cultures that exist. And theoretically, the more open you are to more cultures, the more likely you are to be left-leaning. Which, culturally, I get. Economically, I don't. That's where I get all stuck in it. But that's my problem with politics.
Did you read that one article I sent you? It was talking about two different sides, I guess, of that Supreme Court admissions case.
No, I didn't. I did watch that.
So they kind of get into that as well. But
what
the
the
guy
was.
was. What's
Go
that?
ahead, sorry, finish what you're saying. You sent me something else that I did partake in, not the balloon one, but there was something else I did. So that podcast you sent me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, finish the thing about the.
There was one point they made that I thought was really interesting, kind of talking about, like you were mentioning with colleges, of that you're exposed to more diversity, and talking about the admissions case of, it's like Harvard and like UNC Chapel Hill, I think, are the two main colleges.
Yeah.
But they were saying even like they had military that spoke up as well, as they're like, we want a diversified leadership as well. They're like, that's how you have a healthy military and healthy society, is having a diverse people that have differing viewpoints.
Sure. I mean, I acknowledge that's a great premise, and it is probably a net positive. But if there is a system that is, if there is a merit base to what the profession is, I would bet you if you sat down and talked to military personnel and are talking about diversified leadership, if it came down to, would you rather have a diversified leadership group that has zero experience or a fairly monotone group that's been at it and knows what to do and has experience in combat or whatever it is, I would think that the answers would be a little bit different.
Yes, if you gave them that exact question.
I mean,
if you asked someone in the military, would you have a military leader that has no training whatsoever?
Right, but I think that's accurate across the board of consideration. If you want colleges to be more diverse in leadership and in educators, or do you want the best educators possible for the subject you're reading or you're studying?
Say again.
Would you rather have your professors be more diverse or the best in their field?
The best in their field.
Right. Now, those aren't mutually exclusive statements per se, but they sometimes are.
The Supreme Court case is about student admission, not teacher.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
All right, but okay. But it's still the same. I mean, still the same. Like admission to schools is at some level merit based. At least it used to be.
It is mostly.
That's what
merit-based.
testing. That's what the whole thing with testing is, and
right.
SATs and ACTs and all that stuff.
I think that's a lot of people kind of misconstrue about this. They think it's solely getting in based upon race or their personal history going back.
I've read a little bit on the Harvard one because it was the Harvard one.
They were saying it was like anti-Asian. Basically.
Right, it's anti-Asian. They were putting higher standards on Asian applicants because too many Asians were getting in with the highest grades on the different tests and stuff that they required for Harvard. And so they were raising the requirements for the Asian kids, which is also, I mean, again, like I get it. I get wanting to have a diverse class at Harvard.
They found that they actually raised the
That was
requirements.
Right. Like the kid, like the cookie sales student. Did you see that story on it?
I don't think so.
It was a Harvard student, it was an Asian kid. He set up a cookie stand, and he was selling cookies. But he made the black kid. Oh, who was it? I can't remember. He picked L race and made them pay more for the cookies than everybody else to illustrate his point.
Huh.
Now, was it this specific and written or whatever, like in where it came in the whole like essay portion, or whether it was the interviews that they were doing stuff in? I don't remember the details of where in the process they were intentionally trying to lessen their Asian population at Harvard.
That was what I got from in reading of the article, because I guess one of the people that wrote an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, basically kind of putting their 2 cents onto this case that's made it up to the Supreme Court, was essentially the association of, I guess, people that do standardized testing.
Right.
And I guess have these, admissions qualifications or whatever.
Yeah.
They kind of set up that whole system, and they're like, this isn't exclusively, just race-based. There's like, you do have the essay, you have your actual scoring, but I guess you also have your personal essay, then the essay you have to have just for the English side of it, of, summarizing a story or whatever.
Right.
Then you have your own little personal essay of why you think you should get in, or what you have to offer the school or whatever.
Right. And again, I think it's, but yeah, I don't know. I think there are problems with both. I think there's problems with a diversity first model of student body.
Again, that is not a diversity first.
I think there are problems with a merit only student model as well. I don't think either are the right model, but
right. That's why they have the balanced approach to it.
Okay. I don't quite follow how. I don't know. I don't know how you justify a higher scoring student not getting in because they're Asian, because you have too many Asian kids at your school. So you want to have it more diverse, which is understandable, but you're refusing the higher scorers because they happen to be of a particular race.
I'd say if you ask most educators at the higher level, just because someone does well on a test is not a guarantee of even success in life general, let alone success in college.
Okay. So it's not merit. There's no merit base to it. It's just...
It's not solely merit-based.
The scoring of merit-based is pointless. I'm so confused. Like, what's the point then? Like, if it's just like... I
thought your point was, why would you exclude someone because they aced the test or whatever?
Right. Or why would
I'm saying when in admissions, when they're looking at admitting a student to the college, they're not looking just at scores. That's why you put on there, like, were you captain of the rowing team? Were you on the debate team? Blah, 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 blah. Right. Your whole resume, your curriculum, your CV.
CV, that's such an English thing. I know. Resume. We're Americans. Mm-hmm. I haven't dug deep in enough to argue better. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, it doesn't, like, then what's the, like, I don't know. I don't get it. If it's all things being equal, if everything else is the same and you want to be diverse, okay. It kind of sucks for the person who's getting excluded because they're not diverse enough for the group. But okay. But at least on the surface, as I understand it, it seems that, okay, yes, multiple different people beat the threshold, but we're excluding A because he's Asian. And we have too many Asian kids, even though he scored higher than B, because B's not Asian. That seemed to be my understanding of what was happening in the Harvard cases.
I don't know. I didn't see that specifically mentioned. I think in their little brief or whatever, I don't think it was necessarily they were looking at less Asians being admitted to it. I think that was just their assumption. They were like, oh, well, you guys aren't letting us in, because my grades were this and this and this. And this other great college and this other great college.
Yeah, and again, I
accepted
don't disagree
me,
with you.
but you guys didn't.
I acknowledge that I don't have a depth on this one because I remember it being kind of a hot topic, at least the Harvard one. I don't know the UNC story as well, but I remember it being a hot topic for a little bit, the Harvard one, and I remember hearing people talking about it and stuff like that, but I never really dug into it to say what is or isn't. Okay, so the Radio Lab you sent me.
Yeah.
It was fun. It's neat.
Oh, that was really interesting.
Worms are cool, or snails rather.
Don't remember the snail part of it.
Murdering snails. That was half the episode. They were killing snails. There's some very specific. There's a Filipino guy, or Malaysian, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The doctor. He had found some very specific snail, and they went out and collected a bunch of them and murdered them all and collect their poison. And found out there's like 200 properties of the poison. Some crazy lab tech came in and said, shoot it into their brains. And then they figured out some cool like calcium channel breakers or something like that. And so now it's like the best
they kind of bounced around
surgically whatever. But yeah, the beginning part of it was the golden fleece / golden goose, which I love. I love the petty shit.
It turned into the golden goose.
Right. I love the little petty back and forth. So for context for listeners, I don't remember the name of the senator, but it was a Wisconsin Democrat who from like 50 to 80, 1950s to the 80s or something like that. Never missed a vote. Years. He holds the records for the most consistent voting.
Consecutive
votes.
Yeah.
He never missed a vote the totality of his time in the House or Senate rather. He and a great quote, like the great audio quote from some interview in the 70s or something like that, where he's like, well, that's my job to go vote on stuff, so I go vote on stuff. It's like,
yeah, they were saying
that seems so normal.
He had like a really basic office or whatever, and he was like,
right.
I don't need all this fancy stuff.
Right, and so even as a Democrat, which, you got the whole other jokes on that kind of thing, but even as a Democrat, he was a very fiscally conservative guy. And so he had a weekly newsletter that he produced for his constituents as well as his colleagues and others who...
he put that up He would do
monthly. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, this is pre-internet, so I guess it had to be monthly. That'd be hard to do a weekly newsletter back in the day. Yeah. But he put a monthly newsletter together, and one item in his newsletter was always the golden fleece. So the golden fleece being some ridiculous, what he considered some ridiculous wasteful spending going on from the federal government. And a lot of it, what he focused on, because this is stuff that his staff would bring to him, and he would kind of pick from ones that he thought was most ridiculous. But a lot of it was research grants, and it was research grants studying the sexual habits of sea sponges, and and he'd put that on the newsletter. It's like, this is what we're spending your money on, citizens, and kind of was making fun of it. And then it goes on to the second where they have the golden goose, where basically the golden goose story is a bunch of scientists who were on the golden fleece list and were pissed off about it, started paying attention to these ridiculous sounding studies, but then, looking back on a ridiculous sounding study a decade ago that ended up being, something that had major positive effects on whatever.
Yeah.
And so the story about the snail guy was like, he's studying some weird poisonous snail from the Philippines, and he's getting grant money at the University of Utah. Is that what it was?
I can't remember. Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, what he was studying, he wasn't able to ship it back, and then, or he was getting into microbiology or whatever field it was.
It was some weird, yeah. It was there was some weird stuff because he was dual citizenship and he kept going back and forth home to the Philippines and taking care of his parents and all this kind of different shit. Anyway, he studied this thing, and again, on the surface, from this Wisconsin senator's point of view, this is the kind of thing that looks like wasteful spending. He's getting grants to go study some weird snail in the Philippines that only exists in a couple of million acres in this corner of the South Pacific somewhere. And it's like, why are we spending American tax dollars on this? Well, the Golden Goose says this is why, because we've discovered the best short-term non-opioid pain reliever to ever assist in surgical processes or something like that.
Yeah.
And that it's not habit forming. It's not, you don't build tolerance to it. If you have major surgery and major surgery, quickly in succession, you're not going to need a gallon of it by the time you're getting to the last one. And that's just one of the 200 enzymes that they've discovered in this poison process and stuff like that. Yeah. And so it was cool. It was an interesting story. Like, I think the one thing that bothered me, or that tickled my ear and got me all in my paranoid hat mode, was that a pharmaceutical company bought whatever and turned it into a medicine. And that's good, except the reason that this specific pain block thing that they do is not more commonly used is because it's super expensive. And this is one of the issues that I have when you get into this, grant researching that goes into the medical pharmaceutical field issue, where it's like, well, we paid for the research as taxpayers with, grant funding, and now the pharmaceutical companies are selling it back to us at a premium.
Right.
That's a fucking problem. Now, I don't know specifically on the case in that story or not, whether that's what it was or whether they took that and then specifically developed it through a bunch of work into an end product, because, they took the theory of what he had on paper and made it into a practical thing. It wasn't clear in the story.
Well, it's kind of weird. They don't know who would own the patent in that.
Right.
Is it just the guy that came up with it, or is it the foundation that he was working for, or the school that he was working for?
Yeah.
Usually, they were the ones that sold to the pharmaceutical company, because since the federal government itself doesn't really create vaccines, don't we outsource that to companies that produce vaccines?
Yeah, and
so it's not something that the government would then buy back to then be able to try to profit off of.
Right, but I think that's that issue in the whole research medical science field is probably the biggest issue I have. It's like, okay, Moderna. Yes, I acknowledge that it takes a lot of money to develop a drug. But when a huge chunk of that development was from research grants from university that you went and then bought from the university at next to nothing, and then take a patent on it and then turn around and sell it to the taxpayer at a premium, I got a fucking problem with that. Because you didn't do the R&D that you're saying is why it's so expensive. Or you didn't do the totality of the R&D. You did partial.
Right. It's hard to quantify it. Did they do 4 rounds of testing?
I'm sure
the government floated the bill for the first round of testing, but they did all the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round.
Right.
Short-term studies, long-term studies. Yeah.
But I mean, even still, this guy, the guy studying the snails made the joke about how before his dad died, he was spending half the year there, half the year here, and whenever he went back, the first thing his dad would ask him when he gets off the plane is like, "Are you done with the snails yet?" Do you remember that quote?
Let's go back and re-listen to it.
It was something like that. Are you done with his dad? His dad didn't understand why there was his son was spending so much energy and effort trying to understand this one particular thing that comes out of this one particular animal.
Yeah.
And so I want to say it was 20 years before it got to that, oh shit, one of these things is a really good painkiller that can be synthesized and developed into and whatever. And so it was 20 years of research study. And so
go back and re-listen to it, yeah, because I remember them talking about some of the crazy chemicals they found, that they were putting some of the same chemicals into just different parts of, like a lab rat or whatever, and it was doing totally different things.
Yeah.
Depending on even where they put it. I guess that's where they figured out there was over 200 different compounds that were inside of it.
Yeah, so they figured out there were 200 compounds. They broke them up into individual compounds. And their first testing series was they took a rat and they hung it from the ceiling of a cage. And then they shot the rat in the ass or something like that with a shot of one of the compounds, because the poison paralyzes the fish and can paralyze a human on one particular subspecies or whatever.
Yeah.
And so all he was trying to figure out is which of the 200 compounds was the paralyzing agent.
Right.
And so their test was to shoot some into the muscle tissue while they're hanging, and if they're paralyzed, they'll go limp and fall off the ceiling. And apparently some student at the university who was a lab assistant for him said, we need to shoot it into their brains. And he's like, what? Why would we do that? And the student made an argument for it and apparently persisted for a year. And they're like, well, okay, let's give it a try. And then the first one they did, there was an immediate reaction, and it was specific, and they were trying to figure out exactly what happened, and it wasn't necessarily paralysis, but one of them slowed heart rate, raised heart rate. One of them made him really hyper. One of them made him really horny. whole bunch of weird little stuff. Like as they were like, but once they started shooting it straight into the brain, it got real active. But apparently, like the one painkiller one, like they do it like a spinal tap, and they shoot it right into a portion of your spinal column that controls the pain receptors coming in from whatever extremity they want to work on.
Yeah.
And so if like they're doing something on your leg, they shoot it in like right above your ass, and your legs go numb for an extended period of time, which is cool as shit.
Yeah.
And it's cool research, and
The Lacey thing was kind of cool. The guy like accidentally like zapped himself in the face with
and
with
he
a
goes to
laser.
the eye doctor. And he's like, "What happened to my face? Like, what happened? I shot myself in the eye."
I
Like,
think
your
you're-
eyes are better. Yeah. What? Although I've heard some of that LASIK stuff's having issues long term. Like people are starting to like it doesn't. It's tends to be a shorter term fix than they thought it was going to be.
That's the one thing I was always kind of worried about, which I thought a lot of people have told me that there is some kind of like warranty on it, that they will redo it, but I think there's a limited number of times that you can go back in and have more of your eyeballs shaved off.
Yeah. It seems like it's a bad idea. But
Yeah, I don't
if
like
it
the
works,
idea.
it works. I like wearing my glasses. I feel like it make me look smart.
Yeah.
I need it. I need my glasses because this face is not a smart looking face. But okay, so like I was curious. I was listening to it and I thought I enjoyed it. It was a fun, informative kind of podcast. But like, what prompted you to send it to me? Like because
We're just always talking politics. And,
I know, but my assumption is that because you sent it to me last Saturday evening, which was shortly after.
Well, we've talked about government waste as well, and there's times where I've tried to be like, some of this stuff, there's actually like good things they're doing with some of these things.
Yeah, and I think I think you make a valid point, and it addresses some of my complaint, and I have to rescind a little bit of my complaint
Because even both of the things, well, I guess the new one, the golden goose, is intentionally. I mean, the winner is the one thing that sounds like it wouldn't be beneficial, but ends up being a monumental breakthrough or whatever.
Right. But the real question to be, and I think this is one that would have been a very good little kind of tangent to go down in that storyline, is okay. Yes, this guy studying snails sounds ridiculous. Turned out to be amazing. How many others are there?
That fail.
Right. Like, how many are there? And so, okay, yes, you have this one that over 20 years, the federal government granted, I don't know, let's say $10 million over 20 years. I don't know the numbers. They didn't say it in the show either. And so it's like, okay, well, the federal government spent 20 million years supporting this guy's research. That's cool. It ended up being a really great thing. That's worth $20 million? Fuck yeah. Well, how many other 20-year programs did they issue grants to that produced nothing?
Right.
So realistically, it wasn't $20 million that this cool snail science figured out. It was 100, 150, $200 million when you average it out over all the different stuff they're shooting grants to. Now, that's not to say that we should cut it back, because you got to shoot in the dark on some of this shit. I'm not trying to advocate against it. I'm just trying to say, if we're going to be fair about it,
you can't really quantify that. You'd be looking at some crazy numbers. It's even just those two instances of one failed versus that one successful. $10 million versus $200 million of the opposite.
I'm just saying, if you took the totality of research grant expenditures by the federal government against the totality and value, however you want to value the research gained, you take the big winners, because you're going to have losers, and that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't have winners and like you shouldn't have just ones that just don't pan out to actually do anything. It's certainly reasonably and logical that that's going to happen, but you have to add in those losses against the gains from the wins, because it's like, it's like, okay, in the shop, we decided to go start selling fucking body lotions. And it's like, that's a little bit out of our field, but whatever, people buy some random shit. We'll start selling body lotions, and we spend a bunch of money on body lotions, and they don't sell anything. Well, it still comes out of our bottom line.
Right.
At the end of the day, we lost X number of dollars on that. And so, yes, we made $100 over here, but we lost 50 on this thing, so we really only made 50 minus the cost of what we actually did sell, and blah, blah, blah. And you break it all that down, and so the net positive value in the totality of the exchange is an important number to look at. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't. And realistically, on the long-term ridiculous government waste conversations we're going to have, that's not going to be one I'm going to pick on much.
Right.
Because the totality of grant funding for research in U.S. universities, at least in U.S. universities, that money stays here and gets spent on people and labs and whatnot, and the people that produce the equipment for the labs and the people that install it and work them and do all that kind of stuff are getting paid, and they roll back into the system, and there's just a net positivity to that in and of itself.
That's what I was saying. It's kind of hard to quantify some of that.
But, you know, like the shit where we're sending money into, you know, different labs all over the world, where at least the side effect of the grant expenditure, at least the bonus of a domestic grant expenditure, is that that money at least gets recirculated through the local economy. When we're sending it out in other parts of the world because the U.S. government doesn't allow certain research to happen here. Is that not true? No. Yes. Maybe.
What?
We don't.
Do you have a specific example?
Do you don't want to go down the rabbit hole, so I won't go down the rabbit hole.
No. I mean, do you have a example of something?
I mean, there's the fuck. I don't want to do it. You're going to get all pissy. The gain of function research in Chinese labs.
Oh, I thought we were doing it in North Carolina too. That's what the whole story was. Is we were doing it there, and we also had a lab in North Carolina that we were doing it there.
Okay. Well, if we're going to do it, I'd rather it be done in North Carolina. I mean, my previous point, at least those lab techs and the lab itself and the people that work at the university and all that different stuff that go on around it are rolling that money back into the local economy. That was my point in that whole rant. But I don't know about the legality ones. But yes, the North Carolina part does maybe take part.
I would think even when you have any kind of like breakthrough, it's still, you have that joint paper of everyone that worked on it. Mm-hmm. So I think you share the research. Same thing what's going on in like CERN or whatever. We have multiple countries have multiple, top level scientists.
Sure, but I'm talking about
working on that.
But what I was talking about was the
the general infrastructure of building the lab, maintenance,
right? The peripheral,
right?
The peripheral economic benefit of the grant, not the direct what the grant is trying to do, but the peripheral benefits being that, there is some guy at this lab in Utah or whatever university this guy was doing the snails at that had a janitor that may not have been on staff, had that little subset lab and department not been existing because of the grant and this, one, and the other.
Yeah, but at the same time, I would think that
not to mention
other countries would have that same concern, because we have many renowned universities and different departments that people from all over the world come and spend their money here going to McDonald's and all sorts of bullshit.
Sure. And what Germany does with their money is Germany's business. I'm not going to pick apart, defend, or anything on that aspect of it. I'm just talking about our money and how we spend it.
But the grant doesn't normally fund the whole program.
Right.
The grant is only part of it.
Right, but certain programs don't exist without the grant funding. There's whole subsets of departments at universities that are just exist to write grants, so they can get grant monies.
Right.
And so, the professors who are doing the research and things that get grant funding are attractive to universities. And so while the university pays their salary, they're only paying that salary to that professor because that professor generates grant funds. That's the whole argument right now. Last year, it's apparently it didn't come up in conversation this year at the UT trustee meeting, but that whole conversation last year about splitting up humanities. Remember that?
Yeah.
One of the concerns from the art side of the arts and sciences was the sciences get all the grant funding, but the whole College of Arts and Sciences gets to use that grant funding throughout the college. If we split those colleges up, the sciences are going to get that grant money, and none of that's going to come over here to the arts.
Get your own grants.
Yeah, which, your arts, you're probably not going to get as many grants. It's just the way it goes. And so, it is an important part of the university culture, for lack of a better word, is the ability to get federal grants. But going back, I would be curious what the totality of federal spending is on grants and where that sits in the infinitesimally small percentage of the total U.S. budget.
I would say they probably break it down into even just different subsets. I'm sure there's grants that go to financial institutions and
we have
part of the Commerce Department.
Right. The city and the University of Tennessee are seeking a grant for a bridge purchase and build, but that's not really a university grant for study. It's a university grant for a bridge. But, I think Again, but I mean, that's not one I'm going to pick on much when I'm going to talk about waste spending.
Right.
Like of a $500,000 rocket that can't shoot down a balloon, that would be waste spending. Or bothering spending $1 million on 2 rockets to shoot down a balloon that may or may not have been launched by an Illinois science class. Did you hear that part of the story?
Yeah, I did hear that.
The one, I guess, in
There
Lake...
was one that went missing.
Yeah, they like, we sent one up and they talked about shooting stuff down and we can't find one of ours. And as of right now, the Pentagon and the Department of Defense and all that have not said unequivocally what they shot down. Just approximately where. And so these guys are like, yeah, it might have been one of ours. And it's like I think it's like a community college science class or something like that.
Yeah, some college, yeah.
In Illinois. $100 balloon gets shot down by... It took $1 million to shoot down a $100 balloon. That's wasteful spending.
Again, you're already jumping to some pretty big conclusions.
Which one? That it was actually their balloon?
That it was theirs, yeah.
Okay. Okay. You're
Okay.
right. That's a big jump. But that's still wasteful spending to me. Whether it's... Whatever it was. Was it worth $1 million to shoot it down? It's not... Is it worth $1 million to go fishing for it and get it out of the lake? Apparently not. They're pretty comfortable saying they're probably not going to recover these.
We want to go down the rabbit hole of wasteful spending. It's going to be a long night.
Sure. But I was just throwing a current topical example of what I would consider wasteful spending.
Gotcha.
But I mean, like my number 1A is military spending in general. Like it doesn't make a bit of fucking sense to me. Forget the whole how much money we're sending to Ukraine for military expenditures or how much equipment that we've paid for are we sending to Ukraine. I think that's not even the point. Just the totality of military spending. I don't understand it. It just does. It boggles my mind.
I think I was reading that Jimmy Carter was trying to lower the defense budget.
Yeah, I could make some terrible joke about how they're taking him out, but that's just he's just old. Told you, it was like
98.
Yeah, he went into hospice and he was refusing some sort of something.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, something. There's some sort of like potential something they could do to kind of keep him more functional longer. He's like, nah, I think I'm good. Which you can't blame him. Can't build. How long can you build houses for? Like seriously, which is awesome. Like I think it's one of those. Like what a cool random thing to be known for.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, well, last shots of him doing the Habitat for Humanity was like 2 or 3 years ago, and they had him like sitting in a chair, and I mean he's barely like hammering this nail into a piece of wood. I think had probably something removed off his face, but it had like a Band-Aid like over his cheek.
Yeah,
probably had like a spot just removed or something.
Yeah, I believe I saw that picture as well.
Yeah, just for fun, he's kind of hammering this like, nail into it, like a 2x4 that's just laying there, and it's not part of the house at all. Yeah. he's doing something.
But I mean, that stupid photo op probably did more for Habitat in donations and other things than
hopefully
plenty of other big fundraisers they've done over the years.
Did he start it, or has he just been a part of it the whole time?
I don't know. I think he just really liked it. Like I think it already existed, and instead of going back to the peanut farm or writing books or whatever other presidents do when they retire, he decided that he wanted to go help build some houses.
I think he did a book of poetry.
I mean, he's not Peyton Vetts, that's for sure.
Because I've got a semi-cousin, I think he posted on Facebook that...
Well, if Matt Shears would have showed up, he would have told us all about it, because Matt Shears is a huge Jimmy Carter fan. That's
true.
He actually sent me he sent me a picture. He said he met him somewhere when he was, I think it was like a freshman junior in high school. And he sent me the picture, and I just laughed at it. I was like, you dork. Even though, 2 weeks ago I made the joke he's only 17 anyway, and so that would have been about the age that he actually was in the picture.
Yeah.
But,
that cousin, they got to meet him and signed a poetry book that he'd had back in the late 80s or something.
Oh, in the basement.
They made a book signing, so it has a book signed by him.
Maybe I shouldn't publicize this, but in the basement of the new location, there is a 6-pack of Billy beer.
Oh.
That's pretty awesome. I kind of want it. I wouldn't drink it because gross. But to put it in the room of rando stuff, to put it, to put it next to the gas can lamp that Randy brought me, just to kind of offset, to keep the balance of party stuff in the room right.
I wonder how many people would actually catch that reference,
What?
especially this day and age.
The Billy Beer one?
Billy Beer, yeah.
I don't know. You probably you make a valid point because
I mean, he was out of office before
we were born. Yeah. I don't know why I know that. Now that you say that, like I don't know why I know that random little factoid. Peanut farmer, brother used. I mean, I guess the funny thing about it to me is that the reality of the truth of the story is that Billy Carter was kind of a jackass, and in the crazy political atmosphere that somehow Jimmy Carter got elected, which is a whole crazy story in of itself. Billy's like, hey, I'm the president's brother. I'm going to make some branded shit with my name on it because I'm famous. And that's exactly what that beer is. Like, it wasn't like he was in the beer industry before. It was nothing. It was literally...
I think he started doing it when he was running for president.
Right. He's literally... He like, the whole Billy Beer thing is literally him running on his brother's name.
Yeah.
Not dissimilar to anything that any of these other siblings and kids and whatever do.
That was crazy. One article I read talked about like the Atlanta Constitution or Atlanta Journal, like their major newspaper, when he was governor of Georgia and had announced that he was going to run, like had some joke title. They were like, Jimmy who? Just basically saying like he had no like name recognition. It's like, guys, this is just like your hometown guy.
Who did he follow? Who was that?
Ford.
And Ford was Nixon?
Yeah.
So... Well, did Gerald Ford get elected or just took over?
I think just took over. So I think he was only in there for 2 or 3 years.
Right. So Jimmy Carter
never got voted back in.
So Jimmy Carter snuck in as the anybody but a Republican candidate post Nixon Ford.
Yeah.
Because I know one of the things that's right. Because Jimmy Carter got a bunch of flack for pardoning Nixon. Because one of his things was like, he did a bad thing. But we have more important shit to deal with than to go back and fix that thing in the past. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
And so, but as a candidate, like he's, for the lack of a better way to say it, he was the, Biden is the version in this era. He was the anybody but Trump candidate. Kind of functionally.
Yeah. I don't think so.
A little bit of a stretch?
A little bit of a stretch.
All right. A little bit of a stretch. I'll give you that. But it's still like, I think Jimmy Carter wasn't anybody.
Biden was a front runner, like going into the election. I don't think Jimmy Carter was at that time.
Biden didn't win Iowa, didn't win New Hampshire in the primaries.
I think pollsters gave him a pretty big lead.
I mean, I think he was
when they were still.
He was the 12. Establishment. Whatever. But
right, he already had name recognition, being a vice president for 8 years, and being a senator for 25,
for
30
50
years.
Fucking million. Yeah. Because Pete sort of won Iowa, because Iowa was all weird with reporting. There was a bunch of fucking hullabaloo about Iowa, and then I think Bernie won New Hampshire.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And then South Carolina. So, like after New Hampshire, a bunch of people dropped out, except for Elizabeth Warren. And then Biden won South Carolina. And that's when the Biden train started rolling. Which totally makes sense.
How do you remember all this?
Just, I don't know. Random shit gets stuck in my head. Because, there was something not that long ago they were talking about it. Because it's like, there's like a ton of people dropped out after New Hampshire, except for Elizabeth Warren. Which seemed kind of weird, given how, like, Elizabeth Warren had, like, less... percentage of the votes in the primaries that had already happened than other people that had already dropped out. And functionally, the people who dropped out were people that were taking from the Biden percentage of voters, where Warren was taking from the Sanders set. And so the theory, at least, is that Warren stayed in because the party asked her to make sure Bernie didn't keep winning.
Gotcha.
Or, whatever. Just because she is an egomaniac and wanted to win herself even though she had no chance. Which seems to be real. And that's where that's where the Republican side is right now. Everybody who wants to run for the GOP primary is only fighting each other, not Trump. None of them will fight Trump. One, they won't say his name, which is hilarious. But more importantly, there is a probably majority of Republicans who will vote in Republican primaries who don't want Trump. but they're going to be split up with 4 or 5 different candidates, where the minority of 35% of people who do want Trump's going to win primary races at 35% because everybody else is going to be at 10 or 20.
I didn't realize Pompeo I guess he's in the running.
Nikki Haley, Pompeo,
Pence,
DeSantis, maybe.
I saw an article, I guess, like Rick Scott
Yeah.
was talking about it. Because there was an article talking about Nikki Haley, and I guess they had asked her, how much money she had raised. She's like, we'll let you guys know when the filing deadline is.
When I have to.
Yeah. But I guess in some of the people that she had been talking to, some of her, supposed, I guess, GOP supporters, that some of them were kind of on the fence because they were waiting to see if, I guess, told her campaign
we got
straight
you
up,
if.
Yeah, we're waiting to see if Rick Scott's going to run.
We got you if Rick Scott doesn't run.
Yeah.
Which is gross, but
that guy just looks scary.
I have to check him out. I don't know that I know him by name. I did see a funny meme, it was actually kind of a funny meme, but I think they picked the wrong Republican to pick on, because it said I would rather have RuPaul watch my kid than Rand Paul. And I said, in my head, I was like, I think you mean Paul Ryan. I'd rather have RuPaul watch my kid than Paul Ryan. I mean, Rand Paul probably wouldn't watch a kid either and not be a very good, whatever. But I don't know. I don't see Rand Paul as the evil. Rand Paul is not the crazy right.
Beat up his neighbor.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that was even over. And it was hilarious. They were both doctors. It's like, what kind of neighborhood are you in?
Yeah. Well, I think Rand Paul gets a weird. I go back and forth on Rand Paul. Ron Paul is the libertarian Jesus, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And a lot of people associate Rand Paul with his dad and think that his policy and function is a lot like his dad, which is really not.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people see Rand Paul and go, libertarian. It's no, no, thank you. Now, every once in a while, he'll pop in and do some libertarian stuff. But for the most part, he's a pretty solid establishment Republican, playing the game like a Republican's supposed to. He's not a Trumpy Republican, which I would think in this day and age would be a win, especially when you're getting into social justice issues like a RuPaul joke that this one was making in the meme. But I guess the rhyme scheme worked better. That's why they went with Rand Paul. No. RuPaul Rand Paul instead of RuPaul Paul Ryan. But I don't know, because Paul Ryan's fucking crazy. Paul Ryan's the one that is the architect of the cutting Social Security that everybody's messing around with now.
He hasn't been in politics for a while.
Yeah, but he was
I thought he was a little bit more moderate.
He's somewhere in the RNC, he's top brass in the RNC.
I thought he was more moderate.
He's a position. He's like a platform writer for the RNC now, or he was for a little bit. But he's broken away from Trump, and there's a whole big debacle. Whatever. That bullshittery. God, I had something I wanted to ask you, and I forgot. Have you been keeping up with Ohio?
Not a whole lot. Saw the EPA was taking over. Told Norfolk Southern, which I thought was kind of funny. Told them straight up, you're responsible for cleanup, and anything you don't clean up, we're going to clean up. We're going to charge you threefold for it.
Good. Way to go, EPA.
I was like, nice.
Kick ass.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I'd heard on it is a federal transportation law says that if there is any sort of disaster and where a locality is evacuated for safety, whether it's a disaster of this sort where there's a chemical spill or a hurricane or whatever, that you can't run trains on those tracks for that period of time until that area is designated safe to return. I don't know if that's written in a way to protect the engineers on the train so that they don't have to go into a nuclear fallout, for lack of a better word. And so the implication is that whomever rescinded the evacuation order as soon as Norfolk Southern had the track rebuilt because they needed to get trains back on. And it wasn't necessarily that it was safe to be back in town. It was that it had to be safe to be back in town for them to be able to run their trains again. And there's some reporting from people that have gone in as reporters that are talking about how they've been talking to locals and stuff like that, and that the trains are running more frequently than they were before. And then there's some stuff that the EPA was mentioning about how the actual spot where the derailment happened and the control burn and all that kind of shit, that the Norfolk Southern just came in, threw a bunch of dirt on top of it, and reran the track across the top. So all that shit that's directly under the tanker that blew up or whatever is just somewhere underneath that train track. They like on those Superfund site, like the one we have down in on Chapman Highway or whatever they've been talking about.
I was reading about that, and I was like, wait, where was that? How close was that to that?
Yeah, and so like that's one of those like I don't understand where the term Superfund comes from, but like a lot of that they like just dig all the dirt and they take it somewhere else.
Right.
And whether there's a process to clean that dirt and put it out somewhere else, or whether they literally just pile it up somewhere and it's contaminated for the next 10,000 years or whatever.
Right.
But a lot of time with those things, they just take it out. It's like, well, this one they didn't. They just buried it, threw some tracks on top, and they're running trains again.
Oh, so I reread this because I sound skeptical.
Okay. I will try to find the interview with the reporter that was in wherever, East Palestine,
yeah. Everybody keeps calling it Palestine, yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's spelled the same, but
it is, yeah. But I guess they pronounce it Palestine. That's how I'd heard everybody pronounce it.
We don't want to sound like Palestine.
I kept saying Palestine in my head.
Yeah, that's what it reads like. But and then there was apparently two of the companies that were contracted to test the water and report upon it to the EPA, where one of the two was hired by Norfolk Southern as part of the process, and both of them have historical issues with not handling their samples correctly, which is another one of the same interview. I'll have to find it.
I'm pretty sure the EPA will do their own samples.
The EPA said the EPA came out in a public statement and said that we did not do this first set of samples, but they also acknowledged that they were okay with them or something like that. It was weird. We talked about the balloons a little bit. There was it's the DOD's spokesperson said something that was really funny. It's like, we don't know what they are, but we shot them down. We're pretty sure they were benign. It's really weird, but it's like, well, you don't know what they are or they were benign. I'm confused.
Yeah, I wonder if part of that was the whole pushback of like, yeah, you should have shot it down when it was flying over. As soon as you saw it, you should have shot that shit down.
Yeah,
so
I think that's exactly what
they got viewed as saying being too weak upon it, and now I
think it went public.
And like, wait, what the hell? You can't just shoot that down.
It was a show of force. And
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
It was crazy. They were saying, I guess, some ridiculous, like 20 or 30 or 40 other countries have said that, like, some of these same, like, Chinese weather balloons have been flying over their countries as well.
I hadn't heard about that. What do you mean? Like their weather balloons specifically, or just Chinese balloons of some sort that they're not sure about?
Balloons, yeah.
With or without permission? Was that mentioned in the statement?
I'm assuming without.
Like going back to that,
because it kind of it led into that. Yeah, I think our intelligence department has come out and said that we're aware of Chinese surveillance program throughout the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it. Obviously, I don't understand the value because to me the issue with it to me is that it may have value. It may have strategic value for some reason. They may be better pictures. They may be whatever. I don't know. I don't understand the technology that well. But it's obvious. Like, it's obvious that you're doing it. And that part is what gets weird to me. It's like, why would you do it?
That
so
was the weird
obviously?
thing. Maybe they thought that most people would just see like, oh, there's a weather balloon flying around. Or there's a balloon.
I've never seen a weather balloon in the flesh in my life.
Right. Well, most of them just go up. Most of them don't travel long distances. Most of them are
halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. And most of them are sent up to get samples and come back down.
Yeah, I've never put any time or energy into how weather balloons work.
A handful of actual straight up weather balloons that are done from a weather station. They'll send them up every hour or whatever. Just to monitor wind speeds at 10,000 feet or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, when it's clocking that wind speed, it's going to push the balloon. Can't go straight up and down unless it's tethered.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Exactly, that's the point. I don't understand. It just doesn't I don't understand the totality of the program, the idea of the program, other than to be obvious about it. maybe not obvious to you and me for the most part on the ground, but
it's probably cheaper than flying a spy plane over.
Sure.
But I would think,
But they already have the satellites.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why they wouldn't just use satellites.
You know, and legally speaking, according to that video that you shared, you know, legally speaking, there's no issues with the satellites legally. They're allowed to have the satellites up there. The aerial sovereignty of the nation ends at 7 miles above the surface or whatever it is.
Right.
And so
where space starts.
Right. Where the atmosphere ends and space starts or whatever, it's no longer our airspace, and they can get what they want, and that's none of our, like, we don't have the right to do anything about it, which, you know, that's a whole separate sub-argument, but why would you do it in an obvious way when you don't have to? Other than because you're trying to be obvious about it. And why are you trying to be obvious about it? That's the question I can't figure out how to answer.
They're playing 3D chess.
They are playing some weird 3D chess. I mean, I think that's one thing that some of the people that I listen to talk about is that Mike something. He's been a guest on Rogan a couple times. He's a former CIA operative kind of dude.
Oh, yeah.
He's been on there a bunch of times. He's real fun and real interesting. Got great stories. He's got so funny, like his names, like his kids' names are like Buzz and God, what's the other one? It's like something Mo. Like it's not Satchmo, but it's something like that. Those are like the legal names of his kids, or at least maybe not. They may be the names he uses on the show to not put his real kids' names on there. But I'm pretty sure he said one time that actually their names. But like he always talks about, like the Chinese strategy is very long term. And it's like, you know, when you have a communist style government like they do, and you have one guy that's going to run the country for ever, you can be long term about stuff. You don't have the political issues that we have here of changing leadership. And it's like, I'm not trying to defend that as a better way to do it, but you know, they're playing a long game here, a very long game. Like apparently, like Chinese finance in Africa is a huge thing. You follow that? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah. Like
they're going into like these mining areas, and
they bought up agricultural land in the U.S.
Right. Buy a bunch of land, or they will loan to local people, like loan big numbers to local people to let them get the whatever operations started and stuff like that.
I've seen stories of that.
But as like part of it, they end up with a percentage ownership no matter how it breaks down, and they pay it back or they don't pay it back, and then they confiscate what they weren't paid back and all that kind of shit.
Yeah. I've seen stories of China and Russia basically that
like the way
Africa was basically kind of like the new like Asia, that it was going to be like the next big like market to kind of blow up.
Right. But the idea being is that the long term, the way the Chinese are doing it long term is that it's an economic imperialism,
right?
Where the United States has been more of a military imperialism over time.
We do economic as well.
We do indeed, and we're trying to shift into that game. But again, the politics makes it way harder here because we shift back and forth,
right?
And we have all this inner strife bullshit that we have to deal with all the time.
That's one thing that prevents some countries from signing treaties with us, just because they know that 4 or 8 years later,
right, the next guy might be like, "Fuck this treaty, this is bullshit."
Yeah, right.
Which I mean, there's certainly pros and cons to that. I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Like Trump backing out of the Iran deal is an interesting case study, I suppose. I don't know it enough.
Apparently, they just came out and said that, or they've admitted, I guess, since they've already been accused of it, they admitted that they've enriched uranium to 87%, which I guess is beyond the threshold that
right, which would be called goes into weapons trades
too. Yeah.
Which I mean, it's weird because it's like you're one of the most oil-rich countries in the world, and you're
Iran.
Are they not?
I don't think so. No. I don't think they're very oil rich.
I don't know. Whatever. I don't know. I'm a big fan of nuclear power, so I can't hate on anybody for wanting to put that in their systems. I think we should have more here. Talked about that. God, I thought a local one that we talked about had some follow up. Yeah, I was correct on the whole. The bridge got approved by the city. Whatever process, the process isn't continuing. University said they wanted it, and they are in the process of buying the landing spot for the south side of the river. But as far as ownership, the city will own the bridge, which is weird. It will go from a piece of state property to a piece of state property, over a piece of state property, but the city actually owns the bridge. But it's supposed to have no...
We got to pay for upkeep.
Yeah, probably. It's not supposed to touch the river at all. There are no moorings or whatever. Like there'll be no towers that go into the river. Huh. I'm kind of excited about that. That sounds kind of cool.
It's doable.
I guess. I don't know. I'm sure. Obviously, they're planning on it. And it's kind of neat.
Somebody thinks they have plans.
Because you have ORNL and Y12 and the stuff that goes on up there, and there's some material science going on at UT as well as these other places locally. And so it may be a cool thing that we get some new, some first application. Apparently, the University of Tennessee has a bridge in Maynardville that's a test bridge of some sort of new material technology that they developed at UT.
Huh.
I don't remember where it was, where Scott was talking about earlier today. I don't remember where he said it was, but they have
They put it in Maynardville. They're like, if shit fails, let's put it in Maynardville.
Exactly. But so, Jesse made a joke about maybe they'll 3D print the whole bridge. I'm like, that'd be one of those fun little ways to play the government games. It's like, the bridge is only $10,000. It's just a $500 million machine to print the bridge for us.
Yeah.
Which would be cool. Because then we could. I've
seen buildings that are 3D printed.
I've seen the big concrete ones.
Yeah. It's big concrete. It just has the main outside walls of the concrete.
I mean, I think the coolest automated building thing that I've seen was the container. Have you seen those ones?
I don't think so.
It's like a container, and it's like this automated thing, and it just builds a floor, lifts itself up, builds the next floor, lifts itself up, and by the time you get to the top, it is the roof of the building. But it's just machinery that's in there or whatever, just it's assembling the steel girders. It doesn't do the wall, the finished walls or anything like that, but it's just the frame of a 10-story building or whatever. It's kind of neat. Son of a bitch. I had one more that I really wanted to talk about. Let me see if I can jog my own memory real quick.
Jog a memory.
Oh, KPD killing people. Did you follow this? Hear the story about the 60-year-old lady that died in custody?
A little bit.
Now, to be fair, it's not necessarily KPD's fault on this one. There's been the KPD's had a number of people die in their custody recently, including that guy that burned down Planned Parenthood. But I think he had some weird cancer or something like that. It's weird. It's just a weird. It's just a shitty story, and pun not really intended. Apparently, she went to Blunt Memorial complaining about some lower back pain or something like that, and they gave her some or they said it was just constipation, and to go home. And she's like, "No, this ain't right," and came up to Fort Sanders, said, "Hey, there's something wrong with me," and they're like, "Yeah, you're constipated. That's what Blunt Memorial told you. You need to go home." She's like, "No, this is more than that. There's something wrong with me. This is all conjecture on my part, but this is essentially what my understanding of what happened is. There's something wrong, and it's not just constipation or whatever the fuck Blunt Memorial said. I need help." They're like, "Well, we're discharging you because you don't need to be here."
They held her overnight at Fort Sanders.
Right. But then they discharged her and said, "You need to leave," and she refused to leave, and that's when the cops came.
Right.
And there was some interaction. She was in a wheelchair, apparently, and they couldn't get her into the paddy wagon because of the height of the paddy wagon. And so another cop came in his cruiser, and they shoved her in the back. And on his way to county, he stopped somebody who was driving erratically. And in the process of the ticket comes back, and she's unresponsive in the back seat, to which he returns to Fort Sanders with her, and they pronounce her dead upon arrival. So, I mean, of a stroke.
Yeah.
Is the cause of death. And so it's weird because it doesn't seem the two things don't seem to be correlated. Having some sort of abdominal issues that at least present like constipation to doctors wouldn't necessarily lead to a stroke, I wouldn't think.
Right.
And so strokes aren't generally causal in the sense that something that happened earlier this day caused you to have a stroke this afternoon. So it's weird. It's just a weird story all around.
It's been I'm sure for her it was a really stressful situation.
Yeah.
So it could have just been an addition of the stress of, thinking something's wrong and I'm being like, "No, you just need to go home and rest. We're not finding anything wrong with you. We've watched you overnight."
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here.
I can't, from my understanding of the story, I couldn't put a blame. I couldn't reasonably say, as I understand it, it's this person's fault that this lady died. But it
I
does
think
seem,
Fort Sanders, opened up an investigation today.
right. And it does seem to me that in the confluence of events, this lady died probably before she should have. But at the same time, I don't know if anybody's at fault either. I don't know what she did.
KPD's already released all their body cams.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. She was not a nice lady, and she wasn't being nice to anybody around her, including the cops. But if
Cops being mean to her.
If you're in a serious amount of pain, you're not necessarily.
How are the cops treating her?
I mean, they were tried the best they could, but I mean, eventually they got to just
they were being assholes.
We'll have to handle her. I wouldn't consider it that, no.
Okay.
But I don't.
I thought all cops were mean, and they're just.
There is. I did learn what. Do you know what ACAB stands for?
ACAB.
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 Yeah. Apparently, it's a phrase the cool kids use. It's all cops are bastards.
Yeah.
And so the Angry Atheist show do a segment on it. Like they have a segment on every episode that's called the ACAB segment, and like it's like, okay, what is it? And it's always about some fucking bullshit asshole cop story. It's like, okay, so whatever ACAB is, like I thought it was like some cop code that they were reusing against cops. Like I thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, that's not important. Whatever the crazy cop story of the week is because they're usually pretty fucked up cop stories that they find to talk about and whatever. But then, I realized somewhere I saw all cops are bastards, and it clicked in my head. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was like a phrase that people knew.
Never heard it.
Obviously, I didn't. I'd heard the phrase, but never knew what it was until fairly recently.
Huh.
Felt kind of like an idiot. It's like, oh, that makes total sense. All right, guy. Tell me something crazy.
Didn't say anything too crazy.
Rowdy's got something crazy going on.
Well, some guy started a crypto mining thing in the attic of a school in like Massachusetts.
Really?
Yeah.
It's happening here. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. There's a company trying to put one in East Knox County.
I thought he put some in surrounding areas.
Yeah. I don't get it. Like I just don't get the premise of how it makes money, but
I don't understand it either, but apparently it draws a shit ton of power.
Yeah. But I mean, you're going to pay the bill for it, so it's not my favorite if it causes issues. But like apparently, like that's part of the location they picked. They picked the spot that they're putting it in because it's right next to where KUB or TVA or whoever put a substation because it is a plan that Knox County is trying to push. They want more development out there, and so there's more power. There's power available out there that isn't getting taken up yet. And so they can cash in on that. But apparently, like one of the complaints from the neighbors is
apparently the issue is not just power, but I guess it also takes a shit ton of water to then cool those supercomputers.
Well, the complaints that I heard always is like when these things put in is it's loud is because they have a bunch of fans.
Yeah,
like it's a huge like air conditioner basically thing that's going on. It's like a jet engine blowing air all the time. But these guys that are doing the one here are supposedly like it's some new like special liquid cooled system that just rotates through the system. Eventually, if they ever shut down, there's a waste issue with how to get this coolant because it's super toxic, whatever, and how to get rid of it. Okay, so I started off in the intro. I was going to tell you guys that I can prove that the Earth is flat, and I think the right way to do that is to tell you that at the beginning and then prove it at the end, so make you sit through the whole thing, right? You ready for this? Because it's 100% fact I'm about to drop on you. Are you prepared?
You're asking me?
Yeah, are you prepared?
I thought you were talking to the viewers.
I want you to sit. I want you to get comfy. I want you to have that beer crack.
All right, lay it on me.
I want you to listen. All right. So, what do they say? Like 80% of the Earth's surface is water, something like that.
No, I don't think so.
How much?
I don't know.
All right. Well, let me prove. Let me clarify that this one substance doesn't
80,
matter.
80 maybe. That may be close.
71%, according to.
I was about to say 72.
USGS.gov. 71%.
Oh, they're liars.
All right. So, 71% of the Earth is water, right?
Yeah.
None of it, not a single percent of that, is carbonated. So the Earth is flat. Any rebuttal? Any argument against my statements? Did I
try again next time?
Can you tell me the lie? Where did I lie?
All right.
Did I lie? Did I say an untrue?
Not technically.
Not technically?
Semantically, yeah.
What is semantically?
I guess you semantically told the truth.
I said, I absolutely told the truth. At the beginning of the episode, I said, I'm going to prove to you that the Earth is flat. And I put together a series of facts that prove that the Earth is flat.
Okay.
I mean, the floor is yours if you would like to rebut my argument.
So your proof is that a majority of what is on the surface of the Earth is a liquid that is not carbonated, then makes 100% of the Earth then non-carbonated.
That makes the Earth flat, yes.
Okay. What's the building block of life? Carbon.
Okay.
Most of the Earth is carbon. So I would say that we're very carbonated.
I don't think that. I mean, if we're talking about the atomic makeup of the Earth, I believe the majority of atoms on the Earth are hydrogen. I believe the majority of the mass on Earth is hydrogen. Maybe nitrogen.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure which one.
There's a good bit of carbon.
There is a good bit of carbon. Silicon. All sorts of stuff. I'm still not hearing where you're refuting anything that I've said. Yes, the Earth is made up of more than water. I agree with that. I believe the intro to my statement of 71% corrected from the 80 that I started with. Thank you, Internet.
I thought you were just trying to make a stupid joke, and I'm just kind of going along with it.
Yeah, it is absolutely a stupid joke. That was what I love about it.
All right.
That's why it was a hook at the beginning.
Right, I'm just trying to prove that it's not actually like literally.
It is literally flat.
No, it's not.
It's not carbonated. There are no bubbles.
What's the foam that you get when the waves of the water roll in?
I do not believe that it is absorbed carbon dioxide in the water. That is,
it's just trapped oxygen and nitrogen.
The foam on the ocean, like on the beaches.
Yeah,
I thought that was like fish shit and seashell crumbs.
I mean, it quickly bubbles and goes away, but I mean, I would call that bubbles. It's kind of carbonation.
Well, but that's like if you took a bucket of water and slap it, you're pushing water into it, and then it works its way back out.
Part of those bubbles is and part of the air inside of that bubbles is carbon dioxide.
Sure, but it's mostly nitrogen.
It's mostly, yeah.
So your pushback on my argument is that the ocean is
it's not
carbonated.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I feel confident in my assertions. Almost in agreement at gmail.com if you want to prove me wrong. The Earth is flat. The water is not carbonated. See, I told you. It took me 2 hours to get there. I almost forgot. That's how dumbass I am. Like I was going to do the news of the ridiculous from Sam, and then I was going to play the outro and totally forget that I had teased on the intro of my proof the Earth is flat. So, almost in agreement at gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostinagreement.com. Check us out there. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, like I just said. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Check us out there. Please subscribe. Ashley Capps on Monday. Really excited to talk to him. He's going to talk some big ears, I'm sure. I'm going to try to ask some Ticketmaster questions, among other things. And, I'm going to keep talking shit to Zachary and then ask him to come on. I'm still working on getting Briggs in the room. Maybe we might get the return of AC or even Max. I don't know. We'll try to figure out how to get them here and have a full show of ridiculousness back for you guys. Matt Shears owes me 2 shows. He said he'd pay me back for missing this one with 2. So we'll have Matt Shears back soon. And we'll keep doing what we're doing. Thanks for listening, y'all.